Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Midwest Gaming Classic podcast. I'm your host, Jason Garris, panel director of the Midwest Gaming Classic. And this evening, I have for you a pinball extravaganza type of show. It's all pinball from beginning to end. And we are going to start with Don Caldwell and Mark Bakula giving a quick history of pinball through the years, from the origin of the game, its advancements, where it is today, and ending with recognizing some of the artists. And then I will go into another panel with Gary Stern. And some of you may know, and perhaps most of you may know, who Gary Stern is. He, of course, is the owner and CEO of Stern Pinball, who has really become the pinball manufacturer of our current time. There are smaller outfits or companies that produce pinball machines, but nobody does it like Stern. And Gary Stern of Stern Pinball discusses the 3 different editions of pinball machines they manufacture for each game produced, who they've been marketing them to, what demographics he'd like to see play them, and the future of the hobby. Now, please take in mind that this episode was recorded in 2016 when the Midwest Gaming Classic was at the Sheraton Hotel in Brookfield, way back when. So there will be a little bit of noise in this panel because the panels used to be in the restaurant/bar area of the Sheraton Hotel. So they would have half of the room for the panels, and then the other half of the room would be for the bar/restaurant. So you'll hear other people talking and clanging of glasses and dishes and whatnot. So it was an interesting time having the Midwest Gaming Classic at the Sheraton Hotel in Brookfield, Wisconsin. But it was cool as well. These 2 panels are going to be introduced by the one and only Dan Lucen of the Midwest Gaming Classic. He is going to introduce each of the panels on their own when they come up. So that's a treat. You'll be able to hear from Dan Lucen himself. So why don't we get to the panels?
This next panel, which is presented by Don Caldwell and Mark Bakula, is a brief history of pinball. Don and Mark have been involved with the Midwest Gaming Classic since 2004 and are great people who both have a wealth of knowledge about the topic of pinball and are really fun to listen to, as you'll see here.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Mark and Don Show. This is Mark Bakula.
And this is Don Caldwell.
And thanks for joining us today. Now, we're going to give you the very brief history of pinball, fill in a few gaps for you. Then we'll have the ever-exciting Pinball and Rock and Roll, your choice, trivia. Now, if you want to play the trivia game, you got to have the ticket. See the nice lady there? She's handing out the tickets. So you need to get a ticket from her. Oh, this nice gentleman in the beanie is also handing out tickets.
But be careful, he's British.
So check your fingers. Okay, let's go. This is a short history of pinball. We are possessed by the pinball team. We have been this probably close to 30 years at this point.
We're going to break this down into 4 categories. One is from the caveman time to 77 and 78 to 89, 1990 to the present, and we're going to show you a little bit of the artists and the different techniques.
So many years ago, the Greeks were outdoors saying, we're pretty bored, the sheep have been pet the pasture, and so what are we going to do to entertain ourselves? So they dug some holes in the hillside and started rolling round rocks to see who could get these, roll them uphill and get the rock to stay in the hole and keep score. Well, things were pretty damn boring out there in the sheep fields. So beware of Greeks rolling rocks. But those games live on today in things like croquet and bocce ball. So you see those even today.
And in the inside games, you're probably familiar with the bowling and billiards, so that's an evolution of what they did back in the Greece.
So here is a hilarious cartoon of the early days of pinball. And Gerg's out of business. In 1777, very interesting thing got developed. The French Sun King, Louis XIV, had a party at the Chateau de Bagatelle, and he had a billiard table with pins in it. Go ahead. And it looked like this. And here is an actual 1860s cartoon showing Lincoln playing the early form of Bagatelle game. Go ahead. In 1870, Montague Redgrave invented or patented the ball shooter, the spring ball shooter, which he did not invent. It had been around for a long time before that. And we get the modern Bagatelle. Go. And there you go. And it's starting to kind of look like things you may have seen before. It certainly looks like the toy Bagatelles you see now. Go ahead. And here's an example. Go ahead.
And then in about 1946, wood rails became very popular right after World War II. And they put a playfield glass on it with a head on it. They were somewhat nostalgic, challenging. They had coin mechanisms. Back then, originally, they had DC batteries before they went to the AC circuits, and then they invented the tilt mechanism right around this time.
So these are very simple countertop games, but this is when pinball started making money.
Okay.
Got very intricate mechanical mechanisms. This one actually assembles a jigsaw puzzle, no electricity. In the 1930s, these tabletop games jumped off the tabletop, grew some legs, sprouted a back box, and started to light up. And they had a lot more room for some fascinating art. Okay. Typical 30s game, you see a back box start to form. Go ahead. Okay, moving on. Next big improvement was the invention of the flippers. They were added to the first game that had flippers, Humpty Dumpty, in 1947, and this game had 6 flippers, and it took you all day to get the ball to the top of the playfield.
Hopefully you can see on both sides there are 3 flippers, space, top, middle, and bottom, and then the elbow on the bottom. Eric?
So, 1948, Triple Action started to locate the flippers down at the bottom in the traditional location. Still backwards, and still probably at the time what they called impulse flippers that you couldn't hold the ball, they just fired and fell. This is a wood rail from my collection. This is St. Louis, Williams, 1948. Here's Marilyn Monroe playing a pinball in the movie Bus Stop. Okay. The next era is what we call the chrome rail era. These are electromechanicals, 1960 to 1977. Now these, if you're going to be a collector, very complex, very challenging, very high nostalgia factor, and lately EM prices for you collectors, if you know, have been going up and up. And because of their age, of course, maintenance and availability of parts can be an issue. But nowadays, with our 3D printers and computers, not like it was when we got started in the hobby. Go ahead. Some typical, very beautiful games from the chrome rail era. And here's Miss Flipper. Miss Diamond Jack, that's my Diamond Jack. And the theory is that, you might want to collect some games that remind you of when you were a kid. And I know that when I was this age, back in the 1960s, this is what you did. I went bowling with Mom, and I got to play pinball.
Okay, so part 2, Eric? Okay, now we're getting into the early digital era from 1977 to 89. Along comes ramps, speech, and true multi-ball. The games created a memory. Because they put a computer system in, the player, they could have a 4-player and they could remember exactly what each score was and where they were in the progression of the game. And we get into KISS. as an example of about the 1978 game.
Early digital, and Space Invaders. One of the biggest selling points on the new digital machines is they were so fast that they did not miss switch closures. An EN machine, if it's thinking about something and that score motor's running, it is blind to any other scoring that happens. But not so with the very fast digital games. Xenon?
Remember what's interesting about this game, Don?
I certainly do.
Go ahead.
Let's see. First female speech, I think.
First game programmed and invented by a woman.
Oh,
Her name, Don, was?
Suzanne Ciani.
Correct. But you might remember this game. This is the first speech game that came out. Bogart.
This is Firepower, first true multi-ball of the electronic digital era. That's my Fireball.
This is a 1980
Firepower.
1980s game. And then back then, just when video games were starting in about back in the 70s, at one point when they took a survey, there was 66% of all the share of pinball in 34. And look what happened 3 years later.
This is what you found in the arcades. When you were in an arcade, you saw 66% of it was pinball, and 34% was video games.
And 3 years later, that's what happened.
There you go. The dark days of pinball. Right. So, a few more of the early digitals. They're getting a little more complicated now. This one's full of ramps and very interesting lighting effects. Again with Comet, Cyclone with Ron and Nancy Reagan on the back glass. And the hilarious playfield. You can spend a lot of time looking for all the 80s characters that are hidden in the artwork on a Cyclone. It's pretty fun. And some more 80s references here. Gorby and Maryland. And not Maryland. Does everybody know the story of Maryland on the back glass? On Taxi, okay. So pinball artists have had a history, I hope there's not too many in the audience, have had a history of pushing the limits sometimes. And the estate of Marilyn Monroe was a little upset and said, you can't do that. And they went back and darkened her hair and said, that's Lola, that's not Marilyn. And everyone says the ones with Marilyn are rare. There are actually more Marilyns than Lolas. Lola is the rare one. And Captain Bizarre. Well, I think the first talking head. Part 3.
So here now we're going from the 1990s to the present. So now we're getting into very sophisticated operating systems for the computers inside the games. And obviously with the amount of talking and speech and music that go on, and we actually have stories being told during the game, this becomes a lot more interesting for the novice to be playing. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of humor built into the games. There's a game you'll see up here called Medieval Madness that hit 400 sound calls. That's 400 short statements that would go on during the game. There was also, some of them were created by the Second City people in Chicago. And we get into a display, instead of just the scoring now, we're getting into what's called an LCD display. Okay, and we'll have a picture. We wanted to show you what happened from 1990 to 2003 with the sales of pinball machines and with the manufacturers. Don, you want to give them a little idea of what's going on?
Okay, so this is the games produced, number of different games produced. And this is the year. So here we are, 1990. Here we're down to 95. Things are still looking okay. Oh my God! In '96, you fired the marketing manager, and next year you fired the finance manager, and then finally the CEO has to take a hike, and eventually in about 98, 99, we hit bottom. This means that back in the days when we first got into the hobby, we had 4 major manufacturers. Can you name them?
Of course I can name them. Back then there was original, there was called Data East, and then that evolved to Sega, and that evolved to Stern today, which Don's got the proud t-shirt on, that he got for free. That's why he's wearing it, by the way.
They pay for nothing.
And he actually gets a kickback of probably 1 drink, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we had Williams back there. There was Capcom, and then there was Pioneer back in those days. What we wanted to notice, what you notice, is that you had 4 major manufacturers back in the 90s, and by 1999 we're down to 1 manufacturer only.
Yeah.
So instead of producing, as you can see, 20 some games a year almost, we're now producing only about 3 games a year.
Where were you the day Williams Valley announced they were leaving the pinball business? Dark days. Bad days.
It was a Black Friday in 1999.
Go ahead. So these are some of the games of this era. Now we're starting to get into quite sophisticated toys on the playfield. Go ahead. Rudy talks to you. His eyes are programmed to follow the ball, and he keeps track. They put this feature in, almost no one notices this feature. He names each player, 1 through 4, with their own particular name. And they are Chucky, what is it? Biff. Can't even remember. Okay, but anyway, if you ever play that game and you play a multiplayer game, notice that every player has their own name. He'll call you by your own name, assigned name.
On this game, his eyelids go up and down. He actually goes to sleep and snores, and his mouth will open completely. And when you shoot it in his mouth closes and holds the ball out, and then at the particular multi-ball time, he spits it out.
And so we should tell this story. Okay, this art is by John Yowsey, one of the most famous pinball artists. And they were getting ready to release the game, and they had the timing pretty well right, and they had a game ready for the red carpet premiere. But the artist, John Yowsey, was up in a hotel room frantically redoing, what's her name? I can't even remember her name. Angelica Houston's nose over and over until he had created an acceptable schnoz for Angelica, and then they were able to go ahead. Rocky and Bullwinkle. Star Trek Next Generation, again, real good example of a television tie-in, a media tie-in with a fantastic amount of toys. They were just telling the designers to, the wallet is open the toy box and just dump it on the playfield. Cannons that fire the ball. And in Circus Voltaire, a ringmaster to pop up and harass you.
This is Theater of Magic, and that trunk rotates, and I don't know if you notice it, but the ball is held up in the air by a magnet while it rotates, and actually rotates behind the player and drops the ball into a hidden cavity and disappears and then rotates back.
They resurrected this spinner, playfield spinner from early days. That same mechanism was in a lot of EM games. And of course, you have the interactive genie with a switch and a light in it. Go ahead. Johnny Mnemonic and the moving glove. Go ahead. Attack from Mars. Go ahead. And of course, Mark told you Medieval Madness, famous for having 400 voice clips and having the voice of Tina Fey when she was in Second City.
This is Monster Bash. This game was one of the last games that famous artist, game designer, Don, who's a game designer. Oh, if I tell
Brian Eddy.
No.
No.
My partner doesn't even know the name of this game. Come on.
I buy EMs.
Okay. Anybody else can tell me who the game designer
Who
was?
designed this?
Who was the game
Not
designer?
Gary.
It was,
Oh, geez, not that. No, go
I
ahead.
know this. It was Brian Eddy.
Close.
No.
Did we guess him already?
Oh, George Gomez.
That's right. He got on the second track. Okay.
No Fear. And go ahead. And now moving up, moving into the later games from Pirates of the Caribbean. Again, Dennis Nordman, designer of this game, was here today. Don't see him. Wave, Dennis, if you're out there. Again, movie tie-ins, very important. Stern very committed to them, and we're still waiting. But now some of the smaller pinball companies, the boutique pinball companies, are coming up with their own themes, which is a good thing. Because not everybody has been particularly happy with the constant tie-in to a movie theme or a television theme on every title. Again, here you go. A classic game. Everybody loves this game, yet it is kind of based on some things that happened in the 50s, 60s when they released the Mars Attacks cards, and there was a movie, but this was a theme that they came up with on their own.
In 1998, I'll back up on that. In 1998, Williams asked their design teams to come up with a better idea for pinball than the existing one. And so what they decided to do is come up with something called Pinball 2000, which was a game they did a holographic image onto the playfield. And by doing that, they could have virtual spinners, they could have virtual targets, they could have images shown up onto the screen. It was a very large success, about 7,800 games, which was a huge...
that was a big run at the time.
Yeah, because they were down to about 3,000 games before that. It was a big success. Everybody thought that this was going to be a killer. They came out with the game after this, Don, which was...
Star Wars Episode 1.
Correct, and unfortunately...
And then what were the next 2 games planned?
Oh, the games after that was, of course, Wizard's Block and Playboy, which never went into the production, and unfortunately...
But they may.
They may someday. They had some manufacturing problems, and they had some issues with their management, and that folded Williams Pinball.
And they now make slot machines and money. Everybody loves staring at the face of Alec Baldwin. There's the Star Wars Episode 1. That was the second Pinball 2000 game. And, of course, Simpsons Pinball Party, a major tie-in and a huge slamming success.
Who would own that game, Don? Who would own that game like that?
I got one. And, there was some movie about this, I guess it came out. People liked it.
It did very interesting. When this game came out, you could buy this game for $3,200. And
why didn't you buy this for $3,200?
And a brand new in the box back then to give you an idea of how the games have drastically increased in price.
Avatar, another later tie-in. Now, today is the era of the boutique pinball. What do we mean by that? We mean smaller manufacturers, and this all started with our friend Gene Cunningham at Illinois Pinball, who bought the rights to Capcom. Capcom had produced about 13 Big Bang bars, and they were legendary. People were paying massive amounts of money to get their hands on a Big Bang bar. And Gene had, about 100 board sets.
Well, let me just back up for just a minute on Don. What happened was that they were getting, on eBay, they were getting between $15,000 and $20,000 for Big Bang bar. That for one of the 13 original games. Gene had negotiated and purchased all of Capcom's and got 177 board sets. Now, what do I mean by that? Inside the back box of that, there are about 3 to 5 computer boards that are back there. There's ones for sound, there's ones for lights, there's ones that run the game, there's ones that run the display that you see up there. Gene had negotiated and bought about 177 of these. Gene decided that he wanted, at this time, he wanted to build the games. Now, Gene is a great person when it comes to real estate, but not much of a game manufacturer. And unfortunately, he got in over his head on the game. He was saved by a Chicago individual that came down there, set up a production line, and they were very successful at producing 177 games. Now, what's absolutely crazy about this is you could put down a $2,500 deposit for this game, and he had 177 games to sell. You then had to finish it with a $2,000 for a total of $4,500, okay? The games cost Gene $6,500. He lost $2,000 per game to manufacture this. Those games at one time were going on eBay anywhere between $9,000 and $15,000. The remakes, I have no idea. Maybe Glenn knows. I don't know what they run now. But there's 177. There's no more board sets available. And unfortunately, Gene is no longer in business.
Right. Okay, so the subscription model. So now we have people who say, I'm going to produce this kick-ass game, throw me some money, and we'll reserve one for you. And this is how they are, creating new pinball business models. And this is Jersey Jack's Wizard of Oz. And now we have The Hobbit coming out, and it's here to play. Go ahead. And there's also Multimorphic, and this is what I call the age of the LCD screen. This one, the entire playfield is a LCD screen, and the back box has a very large LCD screen. Full Throttle from Mr. Highway in Wales. And Rob Zombie's Spook Show as far as spooky pinball. So, again, pinball is hot. Pinball companies are forming and new designs are coming out, new designers and the classic designers are all finding work and they're producing a lot of interesting stuff, and it's a great time to be in pinball.
Okay, we'd like to just spend a few minutes and just talk about the designers and the artists of these games. The designer, back in the days when pinball was made by the major manufacturers and still is by Stern and somewhat Jersey Jack, is there's a game designer who's responsible for the design of the game. Gary, there's somebody in the back there too. So those game designers pull together people that are going to do the graphics, people that are going to do the artwork, people that are going to do the mechanical and electrical design. And we feel that unfortunately the artist sometimes and the game designer doesn't get any credit, except if you notice their name is on the bottom of the playfield. So in this case we're going to show you some pictures. We're going to go through this. And just
and thanks to Jim Schoberg, I think didn't we rip off his calendar?
We ripped everything off of Jim's.
I believe this is ripped off Jim Schoberg's Pin Game Journal calendar. Okay, Python Angelo, the late Python Angelo, late great and sorely missed. So, a few of his games, Taxi and Bagcats. Dave Christensen, who was at the show yesterday, famous for his ample young ladies. Go ahead. Norm Clark, back in the days. Doodlebug, Apollo, Smarty. Brian Eddy, Shadow.
Medieval Madness.
Takamar. Paul Ferris, Lost World. And what else we got here? Xenon. Andromeda, very rare game down at the bottom. Margaret Hudson. Did a lot of commission work and was responsible for a lot of plastic and playfield art. Steve Kirk, underrated designer, very interesting games from the first incarnation of Stern Electronics. Christian Marsh, very famous for his version of the Angular People in the 60s and 70s. Go ahead. Pat McMahon, classic style, Fishtails, Atlantis. George Melinton, probably one of the most popular artists and famous for, oh man, these guys would turn out just dozens and dozens of titles over the years. And they worked for companies, art companies like Ad Posters that were actually producing the art. They would design the game entirely, and then the art package was designed to fit the game. Go ahead. Gordon Morrison, famous for a ton of the 80s Gottlieb stuff, 70s and 80s Gottliebs. Go ahead. And Kevin O'Connor, Star Wars Episode 1, Strikes and Spares, Monster Bash, Pirates, Kiss. And Roy Parker, in the 60s and late 50s and 60s, a lot of classic stuff, just defined the look of pinball in the day. Mark Springer, Diner and Dracula. Art Skenholm, stock car, I have one of those. Got to go get that out of storage. And let's see, a few other ones. Oh, I think that one, I can't remember what that one's called. Doug Watson, some very interesting stuff. 14 Tomcat we showed before, Black Knight 2000, and Barracora. Did you know who the actress that he borrowed to use for this face? You know everything. Anybody? Come on. Tell him, Gary. Brooke Shields. And John Yowsey, one of the another very prolific artist. So here you can see Bride of Pinbot and Jokers, Medieval Madness, Adams family, Wylington. Dick White, a lot of the famous Bally games of the 60s and 70s. And that's our quick blow through the artist. Now,
We were very lucky to have industry pioneer Gary Stern from Stern Pinball join us this year. Gary Stern started in the industry basically when he was born because his father was one of the main people behind Williams Pinball back starting in the 1930s. Gary Stern has literally been involved with pinball for his entire life and now owns and operates Stern Pinball. He is going to talk about pinball in the past, present, and future in his panel here.
So Dave Christensen out here. Dave, I don't know how many of you know who he is. I hope you do. He's done some great art. I have your slot machine book in my bookcase, by the way. The one with the etchings, whatever you want to call it. And I've got your famous back glass, which we just talked about. So one of the great people from the past of our business. No, we got lights on here. Whatever I was going to say, I am not anymore, because well, first of all, I am going to say later you're going to, probably more interesting than anything I will do. You will hear, if you sit here, from John Trudeau and Jeremy, the artist and the designer from Ghostbusters, and we're here somewhere, both the people and the games. We're getting a tremendous response on it. It is really a fun game. Really, really exciting. We're really excited about it, and we're trying to ramp our place up as fast as we can. I'm going to put this down for a second. No, I'm not. Coming up here, I don't know how to do that. Coming up here, I threw out everything I was going to do because I remembered I'm coming to Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is Harley. Harley, even though this says PA, but now it's not. I'm going to take this off. You probably know that we made Harley-Davidson pinball from 99 to 2005 or 6 in 2.5 different art formats. And when we look at Harley, we have to think about, it makes us think about our business. And there's so many parallels, and so I want to take a few minutes to talk about what we are, or what I think Harley is. I spent a lot of time coming visiting Harley. I participated in that design with John Borg, not in the design, but in getting artwork approved and so forth and so on. I am not a game designer. So Harley is a manufacturer. You know, people who are into motorcycles get excited about their product. It is a manufacturing business. It must make money in order to make more motorcycles, or it goes out of business. And yet the people who work, it's centered here in Milwaukee, the people who know about making their motorcycles and the parts for their motorcycles and what have you, and designing the motorcycles are here. And the factory is here, and they work with the factory. The designers, the factory, what have you, it's all part of the same thing. The people who work on Harley must love Harley motorcycles. They must love motorcycles. If you go to the parking lot at Harley, did anybody here work for Harley or involved in Harley? Okay, so you can correct me when I say something wrong. You go to the parking lot, at least when it's not as cold as this, though I did see 2 Harleys riding down back towards Chicago when I came up here. You go to the parking lot, it's full of Harleys. They must love Harleys, the people who work there. They must love motorcycles. It must be something they're excited about. When AMF got involved in Harley, they weren't Harley people, they weren't motorcycle people. It's a special kind of product. And they about destroyed the company. They are people who want to make motorcycles, and they design motorcycles, but the whole purpose of it is they're manufacturers, they're American manufacturers, and they design something to build it. There's no point in just designing it as an art form. It's not an art form, it's a business. Wheel artist ship, that's from Jobs. So they love what they do, but the idea is to design the bike, build the bike, sell the bike, so you can design another bike. Okay, pinball machines. We love pinball machines. Chicago is the center of pinball machines. The people who know how to design pinball machines, who supply the little parts, that have the tooling for the plastic posts, all that, they're in Chicago. Just like the Harley suppliers and people are in Milwaukee. It's the same concept of we're manufacturers. We love pinball. We want to design a pinball machine. We want to build that pinball machine so that you can enjoy it and other people can enjoy it, and we make money at it. We're American manufacturers. If we don't make money at it, if we lose money, we go out of business. You have no pinball machines. Harley, they don't make money. They go out of business. Nobody gets a Harley. It's the same thing. It's manufacturing. We are manufacturers. They are manufacturers. Now, when you look at that, you say, okay, and I mentioned that AMF, they weren't motorcycle people. They were detrimental to Harley. And if you look at Bally back in the day, they brought in GE guys who may know manufacturing very well, but they weren't game guys. Willie Williams at one point had Motorola people in there for management and so forth to try and change the thinking. The GE people were from white goods, dishwashers and washing machines. So they would say, okay, how many are we going to make this year? Let's do a plan for the year. We manufacture a product, but it's a style product. So you have to understand the business. Well, the same thing happened with AMF. You put people in the pinball business or the motorcycle business who don't have it in their heart and don't have the experience, and you don't get success. You don't make money. You can't make another game. The same, and that's why we're in Chicago. They're up here. We looked at our market and we said we have different segments of it. My partner who came in about 2008, 2009, Dave Peterson. He was with Morgan Stanley. Now I know what that note meant here. He was with Morgan Stanley as a young man. Morgan Stanley is an investment banker. They were involved with Harley. And he looked at us and he said, well, Stern, you're either a buggy whip company, making buggy whips, or you're a mini Harley. You have this core of dedicated people interested in your product. By the way, instead of being the last buggy whip company, he determined that there are 370 companies making buggy whips. So it's not quite so bad as we think, but in comparison. But having said that, nice shirt. Nice shirt. Oh, wow. Over there, everybody. That's fantastic. Okay, so here we are. Look at this. You look, and we have a core pinball enthusiasts. Just as Harley has a core of motorcycle guys. Okay, motorcycle. And I said guys first, and we'll talk about women in a bit, and relative to our product. I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to talk about women in general because I know way too little about that. I just like to tell you that. Oh my God. Any event, okay. You have a core, but you don't live on the core. The core is great. The enthusiast is great. You guys are really important. A base of the business. We have three segments that we have to service. We have you, the enthusiasts, the collectors, what have you. We have operators, people who put games on the street. And we have what we call rec room buyers, people who just in general, they're 45, 50 years old, they played pinball when they were in their 20s in college or in high school or whatever, and they want to they want to have a pinball machine at home. They'll probably never have two, they'll have one. They're going to tell mommy it's for the kids in order to get in the house, because everything in the house that a married guy wants to bring in is mommy's house. You want a 52-inch TV or whatever size they are now, it's either going to go in your man cave in the garage and the cars are outside, or she's going to say it's in the house. Huh? All right, so we've got 3 segments. The core of enthusiasts, just like Harley does. Harley doesn't have operators unless you want to talk about police departments to buy motorcycles. They don't have a commercial aspect of it, but that's really important to us, which I'll come back to in a minute. And the general public, young guy, older guy, somebody who thinks pinball is cool or motorcycles are cool and they want to have one. It's the same thing. The operator, and more than half of our business, about half of our business is for operators, and it's growing. You guys are really important, and you buy the expensive games and the pro games. You're really important, but if we're going to continue with pinball, we need to have pinball stay in the public's eye. Not in your collections at home, that's great, but out where the public sees it. We need that rec room buyer, potential rec room buyer who's 20 today, to play pinball in a barcade. That's why I got this, to demonstrate barcade. Play pinball in a barcade so that he is later interested in it. People collect cars, old motorcycles, National Motorcycle Museum. They have motorcycle shows and all that because I was at Daytona Bike Week for the first weekend recently. I have never been discouraged. They have, it's a current thing. You know, people collect cars because they're current. They don't collect horse and buggies or buggy whips. Those are outdated. Those aren't interesting. The people who would, and they collect fairly current. You guys are into electromechanical. I mean, solid state, not EM so much. Most of you, there's some of you are in EMs, but most not. People collect muscle cars or old Ferraris or bathtub Porsches, things like that. The people who would want to collect Model A Fords, most of them are dead. They're not going to be collectors. Has to be current. We have to keep pinball current, or 30 years from now, 20 years from now, your collection will be just that, a collection. There won't be a bunch of new games coming out. There wouldn't have been. And the result will be you'll have your games in the corner, the ones that still work, and say, don't touch that, it's an antique. Don't touch it. Right now it's a game. It's something for you to play, something to enjoy. We have to have games in the street. We need operators to have games so that we can continue to have rec room buyers and continue to supply your hobby. For us, it's a business. It's a business we love. We love the product, just like the Harley people love the product. In doing that, we realize that one size does not fit all. We segment the market into enthusiast collectors, into rec room buyers, into operators. One size does not fit all. We have a pro game, a limited edition, and a premium. The premium being having the features, the playfield features of the limited edition. For the operator to keep games on the street, and we have to have those games on the street. Let's go back to Harley for a minute. They have, Ultra Glides. I have 2 motorcycles. I have a bigger bike, a Softail Heritage, which is about 850, 900 pounds. And for the city, I have a smaller bike, my first bike. I caught the bug when we were making Harley pinball and I would go to Harley dealer shows. Okay, so, shows for Harley dealers, not for buyers, and we would show the pinball. All right, so I've got a smaller, a 1200C Sportster that I use in the city. One size isn't best for all. Let's go back to what Harley is doing. They have big motorcycles like an Ultra Glide or whatever it's called, and now they've got 500cc and 750cc motorcycles, smaller ones, to try and get these new young people buying it to broaden their base. And the same thing's true. They don't need the great big bike for everybody. The same thing's true with the pinball machines. Okay, we have more complicated games and more expensive games for you guys in the limited edition. And the operator, mostly, he'll operate some premiums. He'll operate, some of them will operate limited editions. Unless you guys are going to that location, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make money. They need a pro game because, and that's good for some of you too. I'll tell you, this Ghostbusters Pro is a lot of pinball machine. Having said that, that casual player, the newbie, the young guy, the guy in the barcade, who hasn't been playing pinball for 20 years, doesn't need an explanation of what the rules are. He doesn't need somebody standing in front of you telling you, here's how you're going to play the game, what's going to happen. He needs to put his dollar bill, I hope, in, his quarters in, his swipe card, whatever it is, and play the game and have fun. These are not hard lung machines. There's nothing serious about it. We want people to have fun. All we're selling is fun. And so we need to have games, different type of games for different parts of that segments of the market. For you guys, for the rec room buyer, for the operator. The operator can't afford to operate premiums, with rare exception. If he does, he's not going to make money. We see a few operators, but to expand pinball, we need games that are understandable for the casual player. Hit the slider. It's not brain surgery. All right? That's just fun. Bash toy. It's just fun to do. You got a couple of drop targets there. It's not hard to figure out. And then you can teach people a little bit of what happens. Pavlovian pinball. They hit the target, the slider comes down, they see that it happened, they'll do it again. It's Pavlovian pinball. That's all it is. And that's game design, and that's casual player game design. If we don't have the casual player, if we only make games that are deep for you, yeah, we need a set of deep rules on top of that, but we need the casual rule. Same's true of Harley. They need some beginner motorcycles and some big motorcycles. It's all the same. Okay? Now, next part of the problem of keeping a business going, making money. And again, we're a business, not a hobby. We're a business. We employ hundreds of people. We have a 110,000 square foot factory making pinball machines every day. Many, many different models at one time, unfortunately, confusing as that is. And we have an extended supplier community of 2,000-3,000 people that are making their living off of our games. And we need to keep all that going for the future, for our employees, so they have work in the future. I'm 70, one day I'm not going to be doing this, but they are. And they need to, and they love pinball. Just like the Harley people park their bikes in the lot at Harley. A lot of these people have games in their homes themselves, and they go out and play pinball. Okay. In order to, again, we need operators. We need them to have the right price point game. They need to make money with it. They have a lot better chance of making money with casual players with a $5,000-ish game than with a $8,000 or $9,000 game. I mean, it's not hard to figure out, people. Double the price of the game, and you have to make twice as much money, or it doesn't work. They are in business. They must make money, or they won't put pinball machines out. Harley has a problem that they are addressing. That we have a problem. The boating industry has a problem. Many people have a problem. I'm going to leave today's presidential campaign way to the side because that's goofy. And I'm going to talk about years ago when Romney got all the white males and Obama won the election with the women, the blacks, the Hispanics, all the minorities, what have you. He won those groups. We're like Republicans. When you look around this room, and it's mostly white males. Okay? We need to broaden our player base. Yes, there's a woman over here is laughing, okay? Okay, but, And then I have to ask, and would you be here, you know, if your boyfriend or husband didn't bring you? Yes? Good. That's really good. For us, that's really good. We need to, and Harley's got the same problem. They've got this old white male, sorry guys, old white male, not 20-year-olds and 15-year-olds. Thank God some of you have games at home that your kids are learning to play so that when they go out and get drunk, they'll know what to do at the bar. Yeah. Hey, we're in the bar business, really. That's where we started, in the bar business. Okay? Not in homes, in the bar business. We're not a home product. We're a commercial product that you take to the home. Now, Harley's got the same problem as white male, so they really do a job of, if you get Hog is Harley Owners Group. And if you get their magazine, and I belong to it, it costs like $45-50 a year. I get 2 magazines and some emails. And by the way, there's 1,200,000 of us. At $40, $50 a year, that's $60 million. Almost straight to the bottom line. It's a business, it's not a hobby. Pinball is a business, it's not a hobby. For you guys, it's a hobby. For the motorcycle core, it's a hobby. For the manufacturer, it's a business. They need to broaden that player base. The rider base, we need to broaden the player base. We need to bring other people, male, female. I go to Australia, and which is so many Asians in Australia. I said, guys, to AMD, to my customer, I said, you're going to have to do something to interest other people, or you're going to dwindle in this market. And by the way, when we did AC/DC, they were 11-12% of our business, having nothing to do with the band was Australian, but also the weak dollar at the time. And so the guy who's number 2 in the business, who is black, is looking at me and saying, what are you talking about? Go to the locations. I did a seminar there. There was one woman in the audience. One black guy came, and the black gentleman came because to go to the seminar you had to buy a ticket, and the money went to a homeless shelter. He was coming to collect the money. He worked at the shelter. That's the only reason he was there. We need to broaden. Same thing's true in boating. Boating, you read about the Boating Association trying to get more than white males and white families involved in this. We need to have families involved. We need to have more than one ethnic group involved. Same thing's true for them. Now, with all that in mind, and I got like 2 seconds to 5 minutes left, what we do is we got to have a variety of games. For the operators, for you, if we make one game a year, what's that going to do for the operator? What's that going to do for you? Rec room buyer, maybe. Back to Harley. What Harley did is they created a dealer network. And they work with their dealers and improve their dealers, and they're bricks and mortar dealers. And we need bricks and mortar dealers. We have distributors for commercial. We got guys selling on the internet that you guys buy everywhere. But for that rec room buyer, he's going to spend $5,000 or $8,000 for a pinball machine. It's a lot of money. He wants to go touch it. He wants to go play it. And we are endeavoring to create a network of dealers now so that we can expand this business, for us for a business, for you guys for a hobby, and for the rec room buyers as a hobby, because it's not a business for them. We have to have a dealer network. And that's what Harley did. They created a very strict dealer network. And they support their dealers that are bricks and mortar. In fact, if you go down in Chicago on Michigan Avenue, you can't buy motorcycles there, but you can buy all the swag. Swag stands for shit we all get. That's what it stands for in the rock and roll business. And that store belongs to Chicago Harley. It is not independent. The one at O'Hare Airport in the American Airlines belongs to Wildfire Harley. It is not independent. Every store you see that is a Harley store is protected. It belongs to a dealer. They have bricks and mortar dealers, and they protect their dealers, and they create a profit margin for that dealer in a way that dealer should make money. The same thing has got to be true in pinball, or we will wither away. So, we make 3 cornerstone titles a year. Last year we made wrestling, we made Kiss, and we made Game of Thrones. This year we're going to make Ghostbusters and 2 others, whatever they might be. And we make some studio games, like when Greg and Dennis brought us Whoa Nelly. We'll continue to do that type of thing, so that we have the variety that we need, that you need, that the operators need, that the rec room buyer needs. You're not going to do this just like Harley has multiple levels. They have, from an Ultra Glide down to whatever they call the 500cc bike. And they have different bikes within each of those levels. We have to come out with different games, different titles, so forth within them. So that's what we're doing. We're in our new 110,000 square foot factory, almost a year now. The company will be 30 years old. Started as Dade East, now Lynn Sagan, now Stern, same company. A lot of the same management, like me. And we continue to do it in Chicago, which is where pinball comes from. So, with that, I got a couple questions, a couple minutes. I'll answer questions, except for what our next games are going to be.
Yes, he's talking about trying to reach various markets during the Can you talk a little bit about what themes you're going to be doing?
What titles, what themes? Yes, we like to do rock and roll. We like to do superhero comic or superhero movies. We like television, we like movies. But we can also see by the success of Ghostbusters, which we knew something about, but still are somewhat interested on how successful the appeal has been. Here's a title. The neat thing about it, we got a lot of operators buying this game, more than we have in the past, because they can put it anywhere. A lot of times you can't hear the rock and roll game in the location. A lot of times this location doesn't like Metallica, and they want Elvis or something or that different thing. This is all ages. Operator can put it anywhere, any age group, so forth. We know what we go to the licensing show. We talk to our international customers. We talk to a few domestic customers. We read some stuff probably that you guys say. We talk to among ourselves. And we see if the designers. There's a design team that's interested in it, because if their creative juices aren't flowing, you can't. It's pushing a wet noodle uphill. So there's it's one of those things that just happens. But many people are involved in it.
So recently, my favorite bar in my small town got bought by an operator, a vending machine company. And I asked them if they had any pinball machines that would be bringing them in, and they said no, and they said they're terrified of repairs. They're involved. Is this new dealer network that you're talking about? Are they also involved in that?
No. The dealers, let me distinguish. A distributor is commercial and sells to operators mostly. A dealer, and we are telling our dealers, we want you to be B2C, not B2B, only B2C. We want you to, it's just like Harley does not have sub-dealers. They have dealers, and they deal direct with those dealers. Same, I'm doing the Harley model again. We want our dealers to sell to you and to rec room buyers. We want to be bricks and mortar. We've got enough guys that are selling on the internet. Don't need more of that. We need bricks and mortar being built up with dealers that do it. Now, the games are much more serviceable. Two things about it. One is, the games have to be reliable, and they are much more reliable than they once were. Second is, the operator has to make money with them. And making money with them means something understandable for the casual player. It's not you guys in most of those bars. If you're there bringing a premium, fine, if there's a bunch of you. But if it's a barcade on Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago, They don't catch the ball. They don't pass the ball. They don't know that they can flip off the display that's going on for 20 minutes. They're sitting there, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. It's an age-old problem of game design. A, to broaden your player base, whether it be video games, slot machines, AWPs in England, whatever it is, and to still let the casual player have fun and let the great players still be challenged and not play the game for 45 minutes. You know, this right ramp feeding to the left flipper, left ramp feeding to the right flipper, over and over and over again. I can play these games for 45 seconds. I don't need to play it again. The great player can play it for 45 minutes, doesn't need to put any more money in, doesn't need to play it again. The result is the game made $2 an hour. You think an operator's going to buy another pinball machine? I don't. We need games that appeal to you and to the casual player.
All right.
I'm sorry I talk so much.
Thank you very much for coming.
I'd like to thank Don Caldwell, Mark Bakula, and Gary Stern for having the panels that they were in way back when in 2016 at the old Sheraton Hotel location. And it was a special time back then, especially having panels inside the restaurant/bar area. I mean, it was easy to get food and drinks, but as you could hear, sometimes it could be a little difficult to hear the guest speakers. So I'm happy that we are where we're at now at the Wisconsin. Oh, wait a minute. It's no longer the Wisconsin Center. It has been renamed the Baird Center. So until next week, thank you very much for watching and listening. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and game on.
When you decide to come out to this type of function, this type of experience, this type of gathering, Marvel phenomenon, there is only one event to attend, the Midwest Gaming Classic, where you and the games are one. Gaming Classic. It's not just child's play.